Here we go. Peace and blessings, soul family, back again with another one. I know I say it every time. I say it every time, and I absolutely mean it every time. We have a very special guest today who is going to teach us about our brains. Yes, I said brains as in plural. So, what oftentimes we think of our brain as being like this command center that is in our skull and is running the show. But what if there was an intelligence that's woven throughout our entire body? What if our gut listens? What if our heart remembers? What if our mind is merely just one voice in a chorus of inner wisdom? So today we're going to talk to a neurologist, an Ayurvedic expert, and a visionary healer. Her name is Dr. Trupti Gokani, and she's going to tell us about her new book called Stress RX and reveal the radical truths and wisdom that we have not just one brain, but three of them, and how healing from stress means listening to all of them. So, Dr. Gokani, peace and blessings to you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. And I love it. Listen to all of them, not just one. We got lots of conversations happening. So make sure we're listening, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now,
Mhm.
so for people that are tuning in and that may not be familiar, Dr. Gokani, with your work, just let me give a little bit of a background about you. Dr. Gokani is an award-winning, board certified neurologist. She's an Ayurvedic expert, a mindset coach known for blending ancient wisdom with modern science. She's the founder of the Zero Mind and Body Center. She's revolutionized migraine treatment through an integrative lens and developed the three brain optimization program to align the brain, the gut, and the heart for peak performance and well-being. She's a sought-after coach and speaker. She's appeared on shows with Dr. Oz and consulted for global health brands and blog for the Huffington Post as well. So she serves as also the chief medical officer for Saffron and Sage and holds leadership positions in the American Chronic Pain Association and the Great Lakes Regional Headache Society. So through her work, she empowers high performance once again to shift from survival to thriving in health, purpose, and abundance. So family, we're blessed to have Dr. Gokani here today. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
So grateful to be here. Grateful to
Abs-
be here.
Absolutely. So let's talk about your book, Stress RX, and just get into a little bit. What inspired you to write this book? Oftentimes, we don't hear about balancing each brain. Quite frankly, we don't hear about multiple brains. So, what inspired you to write this book, and why is it so timely today?
So, what ended up happening is as many of us kind of have our adventure of life, situations occur and you
Mhm.
start to pause and reflect and say, gosh, where am I going? What have I accomplished and what can I do to navigate the future path? And the beautiful pandemic time, which I will say is a beautiful time. It was a beautiful time for many to pause and to take a moment and to reflect and to start to think about what's really important in life. And for me, it was during that time that I started to think about my practice. I'd been practicing 15 years. I already ran the Zero Mind and Body Center, beautiful outcomes of so many patients, and started doing the coaching work about 5 years prior to that. And I thought, what is the recipe? Like, what is exactly happening? Why are patients that had failed so many centers, gone to the top institutions here, we're talking Mayo Clinic and gone to all these top centers, coming to me in my small little clinic and getting amazing results? What was I doing? And so I decided during that pandemic time, I closed my brick and mortar clinic and I went deep. And I said, let me put this into a writing. And here it was, The Origins of the Stress RX book. I just started writing down, what are my thoughts? What's happening? What am I noticing? What is the kind of secret sauce to those patients doing well, the coaching clients doing well? And I realized they were operating in a way where they balanced what I call the three brains. And they didn't just focus on one aspect of their well being, they focused on this more holistic well being. And I had layered that three brain model with Ayurveda. And I'm happy to pause and take it whatever direction you'd like. I can go into the three brain model, a little Ayurveda. They're kind of packaged together. And I realized this is going to be the origin of the next book. I need to explain this because I feel like now is the time to embrace these ancient teachings and start to use them at this
Mm,
moment. Hmm.
absolutely, absolutely. Let's do both, right? So people
Okay.
have a foundation understanding of
Mhm.
Ayurveda, but also understand the three brains as well.
Sure. So the Ayurvedic world kind of, I would say, came to me when I was a first year medical student. I was struggling with sleep issues. I was a first year student. I was going to anatomy lab and histology and all these different, very rigorous, classes and labs. And I could barely focus because I started having problems with not only falling asleep, but falling and staying asleep. And it was going on for weeks to months. Okay. We had a very serious condition where I thought to myself I was going to have to quit medical school. And I'd worked so hard to get in, and I thought I cannot quit. And I went to see a psychiatrist. It was actually my dad's really good friend. My dad's a primary care doctor. And he spent about 10 minutes with me and he did, the best that he could with the tools that he had, right? And he asked me a few questions. And at the end of this 10 minutes said, "You have major depression. Here's Prozac." And I walked out of that visit and new prescription, new diagnosis, looked at that prescription, ripped it up, said, "No, we're not going down this path." I had no idea where I was going, yet I knew that wasn't the path for me. And what was speaking there was that gut, that intuition, that intuitive center, which is part of one of the brains we'll talk about. So thankfully, I was young enough to be open and receptive. I have to say, if I was maybe later in my medical training, I might not have been so willing to kind of go against the conventional wisdom. And here I was a first year medical student that became a patient, and I suddenly realized this isn't the path. And so I ripped up the prescription, went to the bookstore. Barnes and Noble was my favorite bookstore, and I'd study my, medicine books, and I'd go to the self-help section. I started reading books by, you know, Bernie Siegel, Andrew Weil, Deepak Chopra, and came across Ayurvedic medicine. And Ayurveda was a very kind of make sense science. It just made so much sense with what I was going through. In a really simple kind of explanation, this 5,000-year-old science is based on this elemental theory that we're all made up of 5 elements: air, space, fire, earth, and water. We're born into a certain nature. Either we're air, space, element, Vata types, fire, water, Pitta types, earth and water, Kaphas. And you're born into a dominant nature, and then you kind of live life ideally according to your nature. Unfortunately, most of us don't know what our birth nature is, and we live in a life that doesn't allow harmony of that state, and then get pushed out of alignment. And I read about this, and it made so much sense what my imbalance was, and that began the journey of Ayurveda.
Wow. I go back and I say the pandemic was such a blessing, a
It
blessing for so
was.
many because it gave us a chance to go inward and to reflect. And for you, you discovered something that is not just helping you, but helping you serve other people as well. So it's such a gift to be able to go through some of these challenging moments. The whole idea of stress, right? I still think that as a world, we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing a lot of inflammation
Yeah.
caused by stress. And so being able to tie it back to a ancient wisdom technology,
Mm-hmm.
right? Something that is our natural state. It's such a beautiful gift that you're sharing with people, that you're
Oh,
sharing with
thank you.
people. So I
Thank you.
give thanks for that.
I thank you for saying that. And I felt as though it was kind of my mission, to not just have this information just for my own patients and my own coaching clients. This is something that if I could package it, in a book and put this in a model that is approachable, all of us can, share this and use this with our loved ones. And quite frankly, I can only see so many people. So at the end of the day, I thought if I can write this in a way that it can translate what I've been studying. So it began with that Ayurvedic journey. I got certified in Ayurvedic medicine and ended up bringing that into my clinical practice. Fast forward to this pandemic time. And I said, okay, how, now that we have this Ayurvedic base, what is this three brain model and how does that fit in? Well, what I realized is that those that were doing well, number one, were embracing some of those Ayurvedic principles. They're getting to
Mhm,
know who they were, what their natural state was. Maybe they were born into, a Pitta type, yet the movement, going, doing of life moved them into a Vata imbalance.
mhm,
And they started to kind of get a sense of that. Yet they didn't really quite move forward for quite a few years until I brought in the three brains. And the three brains, we'll go through that real quick. The first brain is the brain in the head, the central nervous system. It's how we think, how we view the world, it's our model of the world. It's how we look at an event and create an interpretation of that event. And from that interpretation, from the story we tell ourselves, we can create a story that's working for us or working against us. And a lot of that thinking part of that first brain, I felt that a lot of individuals that were struggling were not aware of how they were operating with their thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes. So, first brain is kind of delving into that thinking aspect of the central nervous system.
yep,
Second brain kind of touched on that. That's that intuitive, the voice, the feeling that you mentioned, the heart. It's that connection to your inner natural wisdom, which The gut has an intelligence, and the intelligence for all of us, we want to listen to that intelligence, far more intelligence than the thinking brain up here. So, who do we listen to? I kind of vote for the intuitive voice more than the thinking voice, because
Right.
intuition kind of knows more than we do many times. And so the second brain is really the enteric nervous system. And honestly, this kind of got skipped in medical school. Enteric nervous system, ENS. It is a peripheral extension of the limbic brain. It's a
Okay.
feeling brain and the temporal. It's literally an extension kind of hanging out in the gut. 200 to 600 million neurons are in the
Wow.
enteric nervous system. It's really like a vast organ, right? Where all of the neurotransmitters in the body are made. You look at what's happening down there. There is so much communication, conversation, uh, impressions of the world that are being made at the subconscious level that are being
Hmm.
sent to the third brain, the microbiome, the 100 trillion bacteria. So there are these conversations that are happening. The bacteria chit-chatting down there, the enteric nervous system is listening, sending a signal up to the brain. Really interesting thing. There is more conversation from your gut to the brain in the head than there is from the brain to the gut. There are more sensory fibers that move upwards and send signals upwards. So now the question is, are we listening?
Mm. Ooh.
Oh, are we listening? Or are we just too busy and moving and going and perfecting and pleasing that we don't listen? And so I
Mm.
started realizing those that did well, back to the clinical outcomes, were those that took a little bit of each of these brains and worked with them, worked on their thoughts, worked on gaining intuition, worked on their microbiome with looking at food intolerance testing or food allergy testing or microbiome testing, and changing their diet and changing how and when they ate. And they did little pieces of all three. And that was the secret sauce. I was like, okay, all three. So, gosh, let's put this into a three brain model, because I do think as a neurologist, we're kind of skipping some brains. We're skipping some organs that think. And like I said, think probably more than the brain up here.
You know, organs that think. Like the
Yeah.
intelligence is interwoven throughout the entire body,
Yes.
throughout the entire body. I look at kind of like with a tree,
Yeah.
right? The roots and how everything just flows together from the root through the trunk, through the branches and the leaves. Nature is a perfect example and teacher. What role, and so kind of bringing that back
Yeah.
together, what role would the vagus nerve, I guess, play in all of that as well, right? Traveling throughout the entire body. Is there impact or what does that look like?
Yeah, the vagus, the wandering nerve, right? The longest cranial nerve in the body. And the beautiful thing about the vagus is that it is that connector. It is the communicator. It is allowing, it's almost, creating a portal of entry from one system to another. And, it's fascinating. They've done vagotomies where you cut the vagus nerve, and they have found that the enteric nervous system, the nervous system of the gut, can function on its own, which is why that enteric nervous system, I call it second brain,
Hmm.
though it's kind of, I believe, wanting to share its message with the rest of the system. So the
Mm.
vagus allows that communication to happen. And we know that a lot of the vagal fibers are parasympathetic fibers. They relax and calm and create the sense of rest and peace. And it's really important to harness, bring in that vagus nerve as much as we can. Know that the vagus nerve is there to communicate, to share messages, send us some signals of love, and bring us into a state of calm. Realize life isn't meant to be go, go, on all the time. We have a rhythm that is this cortisol rhythm that we're meant to follow. And, the reality is, I did some studies in my first book, The Mysterious Mind, written almost 10 years ago. I can't believe we're hitting 10-year anniversary for that one. And I did some studies in the clinic where I looked at cortisol testing, I looked at 4-point saliva samples to see how much cortisol do we make in the morning, noon, 3 p.m. at bedtime. Of the 90 patients I studied, 90% of them had weak adrenals. Their cortisol production was extremely low. I will tell you, this is mainly migraine patients I was looking at. They'll it was fascinating to me to see, wow, the adrenals have dropped out. What is going on? It's because we're too sympathetic. We're too on. We're lifting that cortisol far above what it should be. So the vagus, let's bring it back in. Let's learn how to harness it, right? So to me, it's one of the most important, fascinating nerves to study and to think about and to incorporate in our teachings.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic. Being the communicator,
The
being
master communicator.
the master communicator in the body.
Mhm.
It is amazing. And so, and the vagus nerve being the master communicator in the body. And now for me, I can say I'm just really starting to discover that we have three brains.
Yeah.
when you have that discovery, now what is it like to understand or listen to the sound of something that is new, right? So
Mm.
listening to something beyond just your thoughts. Maybe what does your heart sound like? Or what does your
Mm.
gut, how do they differ in their communication?
Ooh, we're getting deep, aren't we? So
Sorry.
let's talk about those deep inner voices. So the beauty is that, and listen, this took me a while to kind of start to move in this direction myself, because mind you, little quick early life story. I was born in Africa. I was actually born in Kampala, Uganda. We were kicked out of the country when I was 6 months old.
Mm,
And Idi Amin had come in, and my parents and grandparents were born in East Africa. So we were settled there. Okay. And when Amin had come in, they give us like about 3 months to leave. 6 months old, 3 months to leave. Didn't really have a visa for me to exit. They smuggled me out. It was a really tumultuous exit.
mm,
And I bring this up because when we made our way to Chicago, thankfully we were kind of allowed in, and my dad was able to do his residency, and complete his residency again as a medical doctor. My energetic system was in the state of survival. I mean, because I was born into that mode. My mom was work hard, work hard, work hard. Otherwise, you will not survive. That was her mantra. So I bring this up because I didn't listen to these voices besides the survival thought pattern. So when you kind of follow the thinking and the programs, and from 0 to 10, we're in like a hypnotic theta brainwave pattern. If someone says the world is dangerous, the world is dangerous, you will absorb that as your truth, right? And
correct.
so what happens is we get so caught up in that strong central nervous system thought pattern. It so dominates us that we don't give ourselves a chance to just settle in and hear those other voices. So what are those voices saying? So like I mentioned, that very first memory of it was really clear was when I was in that psychiatry office, hand me a prescription, walked out, and I just was, because I think I didn't have a thought, meaning my thought patterns at that moment were quiet, because I walked out with almost like the shock of, is this truth? And I paused. And it takes that pause. And when I paused, that little message came up. Don't do it. Don't take it. You don't have depression. And it's amazing how when we pause, we start to hear some of that intuitive voice. The heart voice to me is even more profound. That one, I believe, takes intention and takes quite a bit of clearing of our past programs, our energy, our baggage, our things that are holding us back. That's what kind of in the book I talk about ama, an Ayurvedic concept of toxin. And toxin in the Western world, we think of like, toxin as if a toxic, material or something you're, taking in with the food that is, things aren't broken down well. But a toxin can be an emotional toxin. Something happened, something that someone said to you made you feel that you're holding on to, and you're carrying it as an emotional toxin baggage. Unfortunately, that can impair the heart from opening and us being in that heart-centered space. So to really hear all three, it's a beautiful thing when we can hear all three, yet there are things that do impede us from listening. Number one is not pausing and silencing. And number two is baggage, is what I think. I want to clear some of that and forgive and move on.
Wow. So that
A
was
lot of work. A lot of work to do to get there.
yeah, but it's returning to our natural state,
It
right? To your
is.
point, that baggage is something, things that we've picked up along the way, whether
Yeah.
it's an imprint when we're younger from
Yeah.
maybe a traumatic experience,
Yeah.
or something that maybe an adaptive behavior,
Right.
right? That calls us to close our heart down and not to allow that energy to flow. So you nailed, you talked about forgiveness
Mm-hmm.
and being still. So I would assume meditation would be part of that practice as
Right there.
well. Yeah.
Right there. And when we say meditation, I'd love
Mm,
to have listeners understand that meditation is happening at all moments of every day. I'm in kind of a mode of receiving as I'm with you, and trying to be present. To me, meditation is really about being present, like listening, hearing, receiving, being intuitive, and then responding. And you can be meditative doing the dishes. I remember Bernie Siegel in his book, one of my favorite books, Love, Medicine, and Miracles. God bless him. He just passed. He was one of the most amazing Harvard surgeon, oncologist, taking out, these masses and saying there's got to be more to cancer than just me doing surgery, and created these programs and started to learn about ways to meditate and imagine visualizing the cancer away. And I was so drawn to that because here I was in my early, 20s and lost and not sleeping well and saying, what is this idea that I could shift into a state that I hadn't known because I was in survival. Go, 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 perfecting, pleasing, go, go, go. And I suddenly realized that pausing and that meditative being was something I hadn't been embracing. And yet, wow, isn't that powerful when we spend time there? Like what comes out of that is far more productive than if we try to think through something or come up with an answer. Being present and receiving, to me, it's one of the most powerful things to do.
Peace and blessings, soul family. Let's take a quick pause so I can share something that I truly believe in. So if you've been exploring how nutrition, how gut health, how hormone balance all affect your energy, your focus, and even your spiritual flow, the Institute for Integrative Nutrition has some amazing courses that can help you go even deeper. If you're a person that's on your personal healing journey or you feel called to support others, IIN offers powerful tools and certifications that meet you exactly where you are. I've learned a ton through their program. So here's the special gift for you as being a member of this community. If you use my promo code AndreDavis20, you get up to 30% off any course and certification. So just check the information in the video description. Let's get back to the show. It really is. It's that I look at that as the universal life force energy that flows through us.
Yeah.
And we have some amazing realizations as beings when we're still and we're in that space. I can speak to it. I host a weekly prayer circle, and we have people who that may have any type of illness. They could be that individual, or we could be praying for someone else.
Yeah.
But when we come together in intention, and two, and I look at it as using quantum entanglement, right, from a spiritual, from a science and spiritual perspective. When I see the truth of someone, of them being perfect, whole, and complete. And there's something that happens. I know Einstein called it spooky science at a distance, right?
Yes,
right?
yes.
But there is something that happens when we behold that, and through the observer effect, I believe that when I see someone as perfect, whole, and complete, that it has no choice but to outpicture in their body. And that's something that, through the science of mind with Ernest Holmes and, different types of healing modalities that we've seen and we realize within this community as well. So I firmly believe and stand on our just unbelievable ability to be able to use that life force energy to return to who we've always been.
Yes. Amen.
Exactly.
Amen, man. I mean, gosh, but it's so beautiful because it's becoming whole. It's becoming whole. So, neurology for many years was becoming very, very reductionistic in my world. And part of it came from the fact that Louis Pasteur and the whole microbial, let's get rid of the bug kind of theory. Let's kind of fix the system, fix the parts. Let's all specialize. And I'm the neurologist. This one's endocrinologist. This one's a cardiologist. And we separated this whole being of a feeling and being human being. And we became, thinkers and operators, and we stopped feeling and sensing and receiving, and energy just got lost in the shuffle. And we're making our way back, right? We're making our way back because, listen, you just focus on the physical. The Western diagnosis, when you look at Western health, when the original kind of definition of what is health, according to Western medicine, is being free of disease and infirmity. I mean, is that enough? Come on already. No, we have this emotional sensing, well-being, kind of sense of contentment, the sense of just feeling connected to the community, to those around you. And then, of course, Ayurveda, on all ancient sciences, have this whole importance of the Agni in your fire, in your gut. And gosh, don't forget the gut, the sensing organ and the operating system down there, my friends. If your bacteria are not really happy with you and you don't have the right microbiome, you've got some pathogens, well, you're at risk for disease. That's the medical doctor jumping in here saying you're just going to be at risk for disease. 20 years before Parkinson's disease, the first symptom is constipation. 20 years before the first onset of Parkinson's, you'll see studies to say constipation is the most common thing you'll find. And why are we not addressing that? Why are we not talking about that? Because we can prevent disease if we talk about the whole system as one and not just focus on one part of the body,
That is an amazing study. That is
right.
The gut health in general, right? And you alluded to it earlier that most of our, I believe, neurotransmitters are created in the gut.
Yeah.
Right. So when I go to the doctors, right, rarely, and I'm not trying to say anything critical, but
No.
rarely is there a conversation about, my gut. Like,
Are you
even what am
pooping
I
every
eating?
day? Are you
Yeah,
right?
there's not a lot of dialogue about that, but it is so essential to our well-being overall. The way we feel,
Yes.
right? Just the way we show up and present, the ability to be present. If we have all of these things that are, I guess, out of whack in
Right.
our gut, right? Our hormones are out
Right.
of whack. So,
Wow. The hormone conversation starts in the gut. There's so many individuals I speak to that want to, and I appreciate where they're coming from. They're just growing and learning, trying to understand how to improve. And they want to start with, right away taking the bioidentical hormones or right away being on a hormone, supplement. Start with your gut. Start with your stress. Start there. I promise you, you're gonna get a lot further in life. This is someone coming, I'm in my mid 50s. Thank goodness I'm not on any hormones. My cycles are still regular and I'm doing well. No hot flashes, but I'm a testament to this working because I followed these principles for 20, 30 years now. And so if you start to follow, and it's not that hard. I think there's this belief system. This is really challenging to do.
mhm,
No, it's not. It's just adding a little bit on, starting with like community, like a prayer circle. Oh my goodness. Like right away, connecting with people is part one. Realizing you're not alone. Start to make changes. And I do believe groups do help with that.
mhm.
If you got community and maybe grab a buddy and do this with the buddy and kind of together, let's do this. I mean, I got my green juice right here. Let's
There we
start, let's
go.
start trying to throw some more greens into our diet. We don't have to get crazy, just starting, but moving in the direction where we know if we can become whole and our system can become whole and those 100 trillion bacteria can work for us versus against us, just like our thoughts, get them to work for us, not against us. The system then shines, and that's where the energy flows, and that's where we can connect with divine, and that's where the magic really happens. You know, that's where things just come into your life. You're like, I don't really try to do that. How come this person called me, or this situation occurred, or how come I got that promotion, or this money came in, or this wow. It's the divine, it's the universe helping you out because you're on the right track. Bravo, keep it up. And it just happens over and over. It's a beautiful place to be.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah,
We're in alignment. When we're in
yeah.
alignment,
Mm,
we often have a conversation within our group is like, what is the ecosystem for
mm,
someone that has a strong sense of well-being,
yeah.
right? And so, to your point, you've talked about being in community, having eating healthy, whole
Mhm,
foods,
mhm,
practicing stillness.
mm.
I'm sure sleep,
Oh, that's a big one. Coming from
right?
someone who didn't have that. It's a priority.
Right.
A lot
Sleep.
happens during deep sleep, during your deeper stages. You're cleansing your mind. If you're dreaming, you're kind of clearing some things that maybe you want to process and look at. And dream journals are really cool. I mean, that's such a huge piece of where I feel like a lot of people disregard it, right? Up watching
Mhm.
Netflix, up watching shows, not realizing that one of the most important principles I would teach back in the day, and I still teach today, is like 10 p.m. bedtime. Get yourself in your bed, close your eyes, and just get into sleep, right? You will be so thankful and grateful you did that because your system will thank you many, many years to come, you know?
I believe it. I have a acupuncturist, Dr. Yang, and
Yeah.
she used to always tell me, Andre, make sure you are getting your best rest between 10 and 2
Yes.
a.m.
Yes. And do you know what happens during that time according to Ayurveda? I'm not sure if the acupuncturist shared. So one of the things I share because it's helpful to know like, well, okay, great, 10 o'clock, where did that come from? And
Mhm.
the ancients somehow just knew this, right? But between 10 to 2 is when the liver cleanses. So if
Oh,
I decided, okay, I've got this great show I'm watching on TV, I'm just going to stay up till 11, 12, finish that. I'm losing, if I get to bed at midnight, let's say, I'm losing 2 hours of liver cleansing. Okay. So yeah, you could choose to stay up and watch the show and lose the 2 hours, but then you're gonna make up for it during the day if you can. And the problem is that that accumulates over the course of time. And the liver is the most important detox organ, as we all know, in the body. And if we're not letting the liver do what it needs to do to clear, remember, it's not just physical, emotion toxins, all the toxins get cleared. You actually wake up feeling more depressed, more anxious, more irritable. Definitely irritability heat comes from liver. If you're noticing that, my friends, get to bed, right? Get to bed. It's one of the most easiest, I think, things to start to do. And if you can't, you're like, I get to bed for me, midnight has always been my time. Work till 11:30. Do 11:30 for a couple weeks, then move to 11. Then eventually 10:30. Take your time. Just my goal is everyone start moving, you know?
Yeah, that is a gem. That is a
Uh-huh.
gem because I didn't really question as to why go
Yeah.
to bed. She said just get your best. She said actually it would reduce your blood pressure
Yeah.
and allow
See?
your biorhythms to be in
Yeah.
sync with the earth.
Yeah.
But the liver actually detoxing itself during that time, that is a gem.
And the blood pressure piece, it has to do with the fire because liver's fire state and pitta,
Ah,
fire energy, increases your blood pressure. So see, these things are like so known in the ancients, right? They know they somehow reduces blood pressure. And now it's now realizing it has to do with fire and inflammation you were talking about before, is that, there's this kind of sense to this fire energy that pushes our cortisol, our cytokines up, and also pushes the blood pressure up because we enter that sympathetic dominant state. So there's real good science. If we just, there's so many principles. If we took the time to study every single one of these things, we could, but we'd spend all this time creating the right population of patients, putting the protocols together, spending money on studies. And I often say the studies will come. They're going to come. Right now, just practice the principles. They're 5,000 years old. And over time, you'll start to see, we're seeing now all these studies coming back about the gut brain, all these studies about pathogens. And I mean, you're starting to see that if you look at a Alzheimer's patient, LPS, that little lipopolysaccharide that comes from the gram-negative bacteria of the gut, is part of the Alzheimer's plaque, but it's coming from the gut. Same with Parkinson's disease. The little alpha-synuclein, all these things that are coming from the gut and then trigger the brain. The brain isn't doing this on its own. The gut's playing a huge role in all of this.
we always have that saying, trust your gut, right? That is something
Trust
that
your
we use.
gut.
Trust your gut.
Trust your gut.
Mm,
It's only
wow.
just trying to help you along. And I always just say, just think of it as like your best friend, right? Just trying to guide you, trying to give you messages. So my question is, are we pausing enough to listen? Have you, taken the time to just hone into that and spend some time there? And, again, it doesn't take a lot of time, even just a couple minutes a day of just pausing and breathing and connecting. And I think being in community allows you to kind of pause and reflect. And then after being in community, I find, because I have my own group I meet with, afterwards, I'm a little bit more settled in that day, a little bit more reflective that day, right? That's why Sunday is kind of often to the day just to be with and be present. And beautiful things happen, right? Beautiful things happen.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. So we've talked about the brain
Hmm.
and the central
Hmm.
nervous system. We talked about the gut. There's one more thing that came to mind for me and just kind of preparing to have this conversation with you is I believe there neurons that are in our heart as well that kind
Hmm.
of think and act independent of the brain.
Yeah.
Could you speak to that as well? Like, I guess trusting
Yeah.
your heart too?
Yeah, it's fascinating. Trusting your heart is a big one because when you look at, I would, in my clinical practice something called heart math, which maybe a lot of people are familiar with, heart-centered breathing and working on quieting and receiving from the heart. The heart has its own system. And I believe that when you look at these neurons in the vagal afferents, there's a lot of connectivity to some of these organs, and there's more connectivity because of the fact we believed that the first brain is really the command center, yet there's these organs, the heart and the gut, that are doing their best to communicate up to the first brain to help us operate. Because our subconscious program, quite frankly, is one that is storing a lot of, we mentioned the earlier trauma, the baggage, and very often our system is trying to navigate with all of that and keep us in a place of harmony. And yet, the subconscious program with all that baggage is creating a thought that isn't working for us. And sometimes our thoughts push away from the heart signaling and from the gut signaling. So, the heart itself, I really find that as we center in and we move into the heart, the afferents from the heart are actually messaging up to the reptilian brain, to the subconscious brain, which I believe is a network that we can't see, but's there. And the goal of how to incorporate heart into thinking is to start to become more heart centered. I believe part of it is allowing yourself to breathe into your heart, knowing that there's signal, knowing that there's an energetic field that you actually can emit from the heart. And what's beautiful is when you do a deep meditation and you spend time in community and you spend time opening up your heart, you're increasing your vibrational field and you're increasing that heart generated energy, which then can help the person you're meeting with, help their heart open up and help them heal their hearts. And then you become heart connected. And it's, oh my gosh, right? Amazing. This is actually right. I mean, there's data and science showing this. This isn't something I'm being woo-woo. This is actually scientifically shown that we generate heart signals. And we want to deepen that. And I do believe that is the answer to, global peace, really, at the end of the day, is to become more heart-centered. Don't you? I mean,
Absolutely, 10,000%. There's that quote that says the most important journey you ever take in life is from your heart from your head to your heart,
yes.
from your head to your heart.
Mhm.
And I believe in a time like this where fear tends to be rampant and fear and uncertainty,
Yeah.
for each person to, one, be aware that we are energy, right? Let's go
Yes.
back to that we are all vibrating,
Yes.
and that there is also an energy field that is around us, a collective energy
Hmm.
that we contribute to, and that we can align ourselves, one, with the frequency of this planet, right? So when we go out in nature, there's no, we don't have to put guesswork into it, that when we go out in nature, we do heal ourselves.
We do.
It
Yeah.
allows our bodies to heal and to come into alignment with that frequency. But to your point as well, when we are in alignment with that frequency, our hearts are open and we are
Yes.
able to heal not just ourselves, but other people as well. It just
Yeah.
reinforces the fact that we're all interconnected.
Yes.
And the
We
point of,
are.
yeah,
And to kind of touch on the the Ayurvedic and stress conversation just a little deeper,
sure.
as this might be helpful for the audience, is that when I was looking at again those patients and those clients, like what are they doing? They're working the three brain model. What I realized is we use the word stress quite a bit. Oh, I'm stressed, he's stressed, or feeling stressed. And I felt like there wasn't a tangible understanding of what stress, the impact was on the body. Because we look at doctor's visits, 75 to 90% of all visits to the primary care office are due to stress-related condition. And yet, when you look at the doctor, you're talking about the gut before, how about, how do they interpret, Andre, what is your stress burden? How do you measure that, right? So what I looked at is like, okay, what does Ayurveda say about stress? And it goes into the heart-centeredness here. Because what Ayurveda says about the stress is that it's about disconnect. So baseline, I mentioned, we're born into a state. Maybe I'm born into a pitta type, fiery, driven, go personality. Start traveling out, skipping my meals, eating a lot of cold things. I end up getting a little vata, get more excitable, start feeling anxious. We go into state. So to me, this is how stress starts to appear. Is you go into a vata windy, I'll call it state, and your body gets tight, neck gets tight, colon gets tight. You start to get constipation, gas, and bloating, get anxious. That is the state. I was mentioning Parkinson's earlier. Remember the
Mhm.
constipation 20 years before is because that individual went into a windy state 20 years prior. So that's how stress shows up. But see, the doctor's missing it. Oftentimes, no disrespect to physician. I get it. I went to med school. I know what happens. You don't have a conversation of how to manage, constipation. You might say, oh, increase your fiber. And unfortunately, sometimes they're given a laxative, which is not very good because it's a temporary fix and you can get hooked on them. So, and it ends up being where the real story behind constipation isn't just taking, I like the dietary changes. That's good. But let's move into the energy. Let's move into your mind. And if you start to open up your heart, you start to reduce your fear, you start to have trust that the universe is here to support you, you start to move out of state. So, what I have on my website, I've been doing this, I have a stress quiz. And part of the generation of the book is to get this idea of you are holding stress and you're holding it in different states. And Ayurveda defines it as like the vata imbalance, I call it windy, fiery is the pitta, earthy is the kapha. And let's measure, let's get some tangible kind of understanding of how much stress you're carrying. And then use the tools that all of us are using. All of them are beautiful tools to move out of state. That's it. And whatever tools you choose, that's your choice. I have some favorites, but everyone, whatever they choose, as long as you understand there's those three brains you want to work on, there's a state that you're in. One of the most important ones is opening up the heart, though. That is probably the key because it's the bridge of the chakras, as we know. Moves you from the lower three, the safety, survival, fear, and moves you up and move you into the up and open, higher level chakras that really allow you to speak your truth, connect with divine, and receive. And gosh, if we could do that, Andre, and help everyone with that, I think this world could be such a happy, happy, happy place. We wouldn't have as much strife and disagreement and polarization that we do now in the world,
Absolutely.
you know?
Absolutely. I would say when we know better, we do better.
Yes, when we know better, we do
When we
better.
know better, we do better. And you're doing a
Yeah,
great job of not just informing us, right, but giving us wisdom to help transform us, right? Because when we have this understanding that there's not just one brain that's the command center, that we
right.
have to listen to the intelligence throughout our entire being.
Yeah.
throughout our entire being. So you've given us a beautiful roadmap in this conversation. I can't wait to get a copy of the book because I know there's so many gems that you
Oh,
have, discovered throughout your journey that you're
yeah.
sharing with readers. So I'm so grateful for you. There was one question that came to
Yeah.
mind,
Yeah.
uh, just a practical question for somebody, and I had an antibiotic before. If you're on an antibiotic and it kills all of your healthy bacteria, like what do you do? Like what's the
Yeah.
best course of action for that?
Yeah, and I do want to say, medical disclaimer here that we're not encouraging anyone to start medications. This is just educational here and not to be taken as medical advice. Always check with your practitioner. So the thing about antibiotics, the reality is, and I'm speaking from my own journey, even with my kids, one of my kids had ear infections that weren't
Mhm.
truly infections. They were inflammation episodes that were occurring in the inner ear. I learned later that good old Mulleins oil, which is like high dose garlic, and a little bit of iodine kind of reduced the inflammation. Didn't need to be on antibiotics. Back to the daughter, though, at the early stages, I was giving antibiotic one after another because that's what the medical system had recommended. And what happened is that her microbiome, was shifted. So when we take antibiotics, you're absolutely correct. We tend to focus on the offender, that pathogenic Klebsiella or Clostridium or whatever we want to eradicate. The problem is there's a lot of good bacteria that are there too that are getting eradicated. And so there are times when one needs to take an antibiotic, severe infection, something that is life-threatening that you need to take it, or even just something that is progressing that needs to be controlled with a short course of antibiotics. And I can appreciate that. What we need to start doing, all of us, from the patient perspective and the physician perspective, is realize that there is going to be a secondary effect of the medication. How am I going to recover from it? Maybe I'm going to make some probiotic yogurts. Maybe I'm going to start doing some fermented things, juices, and have some ferments in my diet. Maybe I'm going to start to work on, sitting down and chewing my food when I eat. Because that can cause imbalances in the microbiome because you're not chewing appropriately. There's a lot of things we can do, though. The thing is to take action and realize if I'm given one of those, what can I do to replenish it? The beauty of the system, the intelligent system, is even after a course of antibiotics, the body does know how to repair itself. The data shows, though, it can take 30 to 60 days after 7 days of antibiotics for the gut microbiome to come back again. So, in that 30 to 60 days, I say do something, take action, start adding healthy things. If you want, maybe you can add a spore-based probiotic and talk to your practitioner, talk to your providers, ask how to do that. Herbals. I'm a big fan of herbals. There's a lot of Ayurvedic herbals and Chinese medicine herbals that can help restore the microbiome. Don't just do something Western and not fix it. That's what I'm going to say. Because if we keep doing that, we're going to end up having challenges. And that's where my practice, I had all these great outcomes. Because if someone was on an antibiotic, which would happen, because the ENT would give them for sinus infection, give them an antibiotic. Very common for me to hear that. What I would do is, what can we do to replenish you now? How can we strengthen you now? Maybe we can get off of dairy for a while because it's mucus forming. Let's add some things in. So always think of how we can blend East and West. We can do it in a way where we can still do the Western if needed, but let's bring in these other thoughts to help us. Maybe even a yoga pose with your gut rebuilding. You could do some yoga poses like Pavana Muktasana, right? Improve your gut function. So there's so many tools, right? There's so many tools. Just let's do some of them.
I love it. I love how you integrate both worlds, right? And you give information on making small minor changes. These are not life-changing things. They're small
No,
incremental things that we can do on a daily basis
yeah.
to restore balance. And I love that. Thank you.
You're
Such a
welcome. I want it to be easy and doable. And I promise you, I'm present. Everybody here is listening. I don't do anything crazy with my lifestyle. I'm just very particular about every day. I try to do a little bit. Today might be the green juice, whatever. Each day, try to just do something. And if you are in a medical system or in a situation where you have a diagnosis and you're struggling, know that ancient wisdom is always going to support you. Even if you're on 8 medications and have some severe conditions, I promise you, ancient wisdom, add it in, let it be your friend and help you through the journey because, you know, it's amazing what I've seen. I've seen some incredible cases with some very difficult to treat patients get a lot better, and they didn't do anything magical, just lots of little changes, but they stayed with it, right? You know? Yeah.
sustained.
Sustained, loyal to themselves to get better and to
Mm,
become whole again, right?
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
The body is incredible.
Incredible. It knows how to heal. I'd actually, we just want to spend time talking to it. And then one of the most important thing I kind of forget to mention this is don't get angry. Don't get angry at your diagnosis or your pain, or don't get angry at your system for speaking to you. It's just trying to communicate with you. It loves you. It's giving you some knee pain because it's letting you know that something's off your digestion or your mind. Just lean into it. Ask, what are you trying to say? What do you want me to hear? If we can lean in a little bit more and listen, the voice is there. I promise you, there's always an answer. And sometimes I just do that. I would do that in clinic. I just say, I'm not going to talk. I want you to tell me. I just going to sit back and listen. What do you think is going on? And honestly, majority of the time, the answer was there. And I didn't need to say anything. And that's when I knew a patient could graduate from seeing me and a coaching client could move on. They didn't need me. They had their answers. I know exactly why I got that migraine. I know exactly. I was doing this and this and this, and I was up late and da da. I didn't listen to that. I became a perfectionist. Okay. It sounds like you have the answers. I don't think you need to make a follow-up appointment with me. And that's the beauty, because when you follow intelligence, internal intelligence, you don't need the providers. You don't need the system. You got the answers right there. And that isn't that the coolest and most empowering thing?
That
Like,
is amazing.
yeah.
That is amazing. You're reminding me, you said something about the intelligence, and I'm reminded of Stevie Wonder got a song called As, one of my favorite songs, right? And it's
Yeah.
one of the lines, it says, as rosebuds know to bloom in early May, right? There's just an intelligence with that. But also he
Yes.
says, just as time knew to move on from the beginning. Like there
Oh
is a
my
natural
gosh.
intelligence in everything in life,
Everything in
but we have to
life.
listen.
But and what gets in the way, and I have a chapter on the book, I have a quiz in the book about this, is the ego. We don't have enough time to go into that, but that tends to get in the way. And there's a whole reason it jumps in, and it's another story. And there's a quiz I talk about like the ego and how the ego prevents us from listening in. And, at the end of the day, if we can be compassionate with ourselves, back to the heart, compassionate that we're just learning, we're growing, we're trying, we're doing the best that we can, you know, uh, things will start to make sense. The challenges in life will start to make sense. The things that appear challenging, you'll look at that and say, that was supposed to happen, wasn't it? Because I call it, from Michael Beckwith, I remember this beautiful conversation about Kensho versus Satori. And I love this idea, from the Agape Center, right? I love him. He's amazing. And the Kensho concept is this idea that, within the midst of a challenge, we want nothing to get out of it. Like that pandemic, who wanted to just be like, we're done. 4 weeks, I'm done with this. But it wasn't going to be done in 4 weeks, was it? And within the midst of a challenge, our system wants to move out of it quickly. Though the beauty is, if you pause and you reflect and say within the challenge, why is this happening for me, not to me, right? Why is this happening for me, not to me? Just keep asking that question. Answers will come. You'll start to reflect on your life. You'll start to reflect on things. And suddenly that challenge actually is an opportunity for growth, right? And then we get to the Satori, which is that enlightenment without pain, because Kensho is the pain creating enlightenment. And here we can start getting enlightened without really having to struggle so much. And is that a nice place to be? So, if we can just help each other with compassion, know that challenges are there. Yeah,
Yes,
let's help each other learn from them and grow from them and move forward from them. Then the beauty really happens, right?
that's powerful. Asking empowering questions.
That's the key.
Asking those questions.
Empowering questions.
Mm.
Not why did this happen to me? Why did this happen for me? And then letting yourself get into that messaging. Why am I so excitable? Like when I was in my early stages of insomnia, sleep issues, I actually, thankfully was reading these books that were getting me to think those empowering thoughts. Not getting angry, not getting upset, not I can't believe another night, and telling everyone my story about it. How is that helpful? I'm just hardwiring the story of pain. And quite frankly, my friends didn't know what to do. So me asking, and telling them over and over, one of the best messages I learned is to stop talking about it and start listening to what you're supposed to receive from it. It's hard to, as a physician, you kind of go in and the patients say, well, am I not supposed to talk to you about my pain? Of course, you're supposed to share, but there's a conversation then beyond that about what's underneath this. And that's the piece that in the 7-minute visit at the doctor's office is kind of hard to get to, isn't it? That's what we need to do the work for.
That's exactly it. That is exactly it. Getting down to it, not just the symptom of it, but the
Man,
truth of it. The
the
truth of it.
truth. There's always a truth underneath it. Are we ready to hear it? And
That's
then
right.
make the changes. Because the
I
changes
love it.
I have to be made. But it's
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful when we can embrace
Yeah.
them and bring
And
them
it's
and honor them.
for our good. It's
It's
for our
for
good.
our greater good and the good of those around us. We're happier, better people for those around us too, right?
That's right. That's right. Healers heal.
Healers heal. You
Healers
got it.
heal.
You
Heal
got
other
it.
people.
You
Dr.
got
Gokani,
it.
this has been an absolutely
Oh,
fantastic conversation. I'm so grateful for your sacred yes, for you saying yes to writing this
absolutely.
book and sharing your journey and the
Thank you.
information with all of us. We are greater for it. Just tell the people how, I guess, when the book drops and how we can keep
Yeah.
in contact with you and stay up to date with your all the
Yes.
information.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This has been a beautiful conversation. And the book is dropping May 14th, and we have on my website a little pop-up. You can enter your email to be able to be alerted to more details. I'm going to actually do like a book club, a virtual book club. I have a live one coming up in Chicago for those that are in Chicago. Welcome to join. A virtual one to kind of encourage people to meet all over the world and to discuss these, thoughts on this book. And I have a couple of links that you could share with like a pre-order link, Barnes and Nobles, and an Amazon link to pre-order. I'd be grateful if you want to put your name in there.
Absolutely. I'll put all that in the description
Yeah,
too for
and there's
people.
some great discounts coming. It's going to be available even like 99 cents, on Amazon, I believe the portal. Get my marketing people to put that together for everyone to receive this wisdom. My goal is to share this with as many people as possible because there are too many people struggling, too many people feeling lost and disconnected and overwhelmed. And I'm here to tell you there is a reason. There's a reason for things to happen. There's a reason for challenges, but just allow yourself to move into a space of openness, growth, and learning something new because I promise you, it's going to serve you in a way that you have no idea.
I love it. I love it. Dr. Gokani, thank you so much
Thank
for this
you.
wonderful conversation and the wisdom that you have shared. So, family, I am putting all of the information to Dr. Gokani and her social media, in addition to the book, in the description for this video. I love you. I appreciate you. And before we go, I wanted to say, may we learn to trust the quiet wisdom of the heart, the deep knowing of the gut, and the clarity of the mind, not as separate voices, but as a symphony of sacred intelligence. It is in the spaces between our breath, may stress become our teacher, and stillness our medicine. Ashe.
Couldn't have said it better myself.